I am James Ezimoha. Welcome to Africa News, where we bring you the latest updates from across the African continent. Let's dive in. Rebel leader vows to hold Goma and push forward towards Kinshasa. Health worker dies in Kampala, Uganda. Officials confirm Ebola outbreak. South Africans debate country's military preparedness on the continent. Tensions continue to rise in the Democratic Republic of Congo as Colonel Nanga, leader of the Congo River Alliance rebel coalition, vows to maintain control of Goma and push towards the capital, Kinshasa. The widespread displacement continues in the region, with growing international concern over escalating violence and foreign involvement.
The leader of the Congo River Alliance rebel coalition, Colonel Nanga, has vowed to hold Goma and push forward towards Kinshasa. At a press conference, he accused the government of militarizing the region and defended his forces' control of the city. Speaking in Goma days after its capture, Nanga claimed the rebels were establishing secure humanitarian corridors to allow displaced civilians to return. He insisted that key roads, including those to Rutshuru and Sake, were now under rebel control and critical for supplying essential goods. However, the situation in Goma remains tense. Streets are largely deserted, with debris and abandoned military fatigue scattered across the city. M23 fighters, heavily armed and patrolling in pickup trucks, maintain their presence as uncertainty lingers over the city's future. Nanga sharply criticized President Felix Tshisekedi's government, accusing it of reckless militarization and arming untrained civilians. He claimed that foreign forces had been invited into the conflict, escalating tensions in the already volatile eastern region. The rebel advance has triggered a humanitarian crisis, forcing thousands to flee into Rwanda. As M23 fighters push south towards Bukavu, international pressure is mounting on Rwanda over its alleged support for the rebels. Meanwhile, protests in Kinshasa against Rwanda's involvement have led to attacks on foreign embassies.
Concerns are growing over a worsening humanitarian situation in Goma, with aid access restricted and essential supplies running low. Meanwhile, tensions in the region continue to rise amid ongoing conflict and international scrutiny.
The World Food Programme raised concerns about the lack of humanitarian access to Goma and nearby camps for internally displaced people. Experts have cautioned that Goma is on the brink of a humanitarian crisis as essential services collapse under rebel control.
People are really running out of food, clean water, medical supplies, and that's a big concern. So the supply chain has really been strangled at the moment. If you think about land access, air access, when everything is closed down.
Several displacement sites, including on the outskirts of Goma, where over 300,000 displaced persons have sought refuge, have been partially or completely emptied as families fled the fighting. M23 leader Colonel Nanga declared his intention to remain in Goma and push forward toward Kinshasa. He claimed the group was setting up secure humanitarian corridors to facilitate the return of displaced people, while also accusing President Felix Tshisekedi's administration of excessively militarizing the region. Meanwhile, international pressure is increasing on Rwanda over allegations that it is supporting the rebels.
As fighting escalates in eastern Congo, officials are rallying for support for the wounded soldiers. A nationwide blood donation drive is underway to help those injured on the front lines.
Congo's First Lady, Prime Minister and Health Minister led a blood drive in Kinshasa, calling on citizens to support injured soldiers. The push comes as medical shortages grow, with M23 rebels seizing Goma and advancing south. Thousands have fled, protests have erupted, and humanitarian aid remains restricted. Some Congolese say donating blood is their way of helping soldiers who are risking their lives on the battlefield.
J'ai fait les dons de sang parce que le Congo est en guerre, le Congo est agressé.
I donated blood because Congo is at war, Congo is under attack. And as you know, on the front lines are the FARDC soldiers and our brothers from Wasalendo, civilian militias, who are fighting to defend our territorial integrity. During the battles, some of our own may be wounded, and their injuries often require blood transfusions to save their lives. So my presence here is to fulfill this duty as a Congolese citizen, supporting the FARDC.
With rebels advancing and aid blocked, authorities hope more citizens will step up. Meanwhile, the crisis worsens as fighting spreads toward Bukavu.
South Sudan has lifted a nationwide curfew that had been put in place for over 10 days following violent riots in the capital. The unrest was sparked by allegations of killings of South Sudanese citizens by Sudanese forces. Protesters claimed the Sudanese army and allied groups targeted civilians believed to support rebels. Human rights groups also condemned the violence, while Sudan's military called it individual violations. With the situation now under control, South Sudanese authorities have lifted the curfew and are restoring normalcy in the country. South Africa's role as a regional power is being called into question after its troops suffered heavy losses in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Citizens and experts are now debating the country's military preparedness and its ability to project power on the continent.
South Africa's military setbacks in the Democratic Republic of Congo are raising concern. 12 troops have died in clashes with Rwandan-backed M23 rebels as the insurgents push south after seizing Goma. At home, critics blame years of defence cuts for leaving soldiers exposed. Experts say underfunding has left South African troops vulnerable, warning that the military is losing its regional power.
There is, in my view, no quick outcome to a better situation for South Africa in terms of its existence as a regional power. It has allowed itself to deteriorate as a power, and I mean, it should not be a situation where it's able to be bossed around by Rwanda. Yet that is the case right now. Our troops in the DRC are in a very precarious spot. They are effectively hostages of Rwandan and M23 forces, and we don't have much of an ability to answer that, either diplomatically or militarily.
Meanwhile, families of soldiers are demanding better support as casualties rise and questions grow over South Africa's military involvement abroad.
I would like them to assist the soldiers because knowing that there's a friend of mine's son also involved and it's very bad out there. People dying, it's not nice at all to see family members die and then they must come back to South Africa, you know, to bury them, and so all we need is prayer for them to come back to South Africa and live their lives with their family.
With M23 rebels pushing south, South Africa faces a tough decision to either commit more troops or scale back its role. Meanwhile, calls for increased defence funding grow louder as Ramaphosa's leadership comes under scrutiny at home and abroad.
Uganda announced Ebola outbreak on Thursday after a health worker in the capital, Kampala, died from the virus. Diana Atwin, permanent secretary at the Ministry of Health, confirmed that a 32-year-old male nurse from Mulango National Referral Hospital tested positive for the Sudan Ebola virus.
The nurse experienced multi-organ failure and passed away at Mulago on Wednesday, marking the 8th Ebola outbreak in the country. Uganda's Permanent Secretary of Health, Diana Atwine, stated that vaccination of all identified contacts would begin soon, as the country already had Ebola vaccines on hand.
And want to thank the teams that worked overnight to make sure that we got these results in time and were able to start immediately the work. We also wanted to say that although this patient was our work and working on the ward, from the teams that he was working with, no one has shown any sign or symptom of Ebola, and no history of the patient that has been listed as the potential source of infection on the ward.
Uganda is also collaborating with the UN and the World Health Organization to secure additional doses. The Ebola virus, which is highly contagious, causes symptoms like fever, vomiting, diarrhea, and internal and external bleeding. The fatality rate ranges from 50% to 89%, depending on the viral subtype. The male nurse who had sought treatment at several facilities, including Mulago, and with a traditional healer, was the first confirmed case of the outbreak. With Kampala being a densely populated city of over 4 million people and a transportation hub for neighbouring countries, contact tracing poses significant challenges. The virus is spread through contact with infected bodily fluids and tissue, with symptoms including headache, vomiting of blood, muscle pain, and bleeding.
A surge in violence against women in Kenya has sparked a growing movement of self-defense and activism. With the police facing criticisms for inaction, many women are turning to self-defense courses to protect themselves.
Between August and October of last year, at least 97 women were killed in femicides across Kenya, according to police figures. The rise in violence, which includes the brutal murder of women like Olympic runner Rebecca Cheptegei, has prompted a growing number of women, particularly in impoverished informal settlements, to take matters into their own hands. In Nairobi's Korogocho area, a self-defense class called Susu Jukinge, Swahili, for Grandmother Protect Yourself, has become an essential part of women's efforts to fight back. The course was started nearly 25 years ago after several women were raped and killed in the community, and it has since grown to support women of all ages. All the residents in the region expressed their deep concerns about the current wave of violence and how self-defense skills can save the lives of women during an attempted assault.
It's very good if they would love to do it, because this is something someone has to like from their heart. They must have the will to do it, because there is nothing we demand from anyone. It's up to you to come and interact with your fellow women. This is something that really scares us, to see a young woman and young children being killed. It is not a good thing. When he was now attempting to rape me, I grabbed his private parts with all my strength and twisted it, and he started screaming. Those who were close heard the screams and asked what was going on, as they had seen me going in that direction. They asked why that man had followed me. I wasn't even the one screaming. When people came, they caught him as he was and started beating him up, and that's how I was saved.
The men also spoke about how the program has helped reduce violence in their community.
The attacks by young men, in this village, the old women were being attacked a lot. But since they started their group, these cases have reduced.
As femicides continue to rise in Kenya, many women are finding strength in these self-defense programs. But the lack of systemic change in law enforcement and legal protection remain a pressing concern. The struggle for women's safety is far from over, and while some women are able to protect themselves, activists stress the need for broader legal reforms and police accountability to end gender-based violence.
That's all we have today on African News. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.